So I have something to admit. I'm here partially out of selfish reasons. I'm hoping that the audience can help me out today. I did my dissertation, finished last year, and I'm writing an article. And the last part of the article is talking about how do you apply my findings to the community. And so as I go through my dissertation, it would be really helpful if any ideas pop up of how to translate these numbers into actual behaviors and treatments and prevention messages. So a little bit about me that would help you figure out why I'm approaching research the way I do. I'm primarily a community mental health clinician, a therapist that sees a wide range of patients. But in order to graduate, I had to finish a dissertation. So I didn't really have much interest in research, and so I approached it as a community mental health therapist. I was like, okay, so what's impacting my community? What needs to be researched, and how can it be applied to clinical practice? And so I went to a very similar talk to this, and Dr. Eddie Chu was talking about the different prevalence rates in the API community. And the most alarming thing was one of the rates that Michael had talked about. It was 60%, and it was one special subset of Asian Americans, the Southeast Asian Americans, had a prevalence rate of 60%. Wow, right? I was like, that's 60%. That's compared to the national, which ranges from, the adult national ranges from how much? You remember? 5%, yes. So that's an alarm. 5%. So I was like, okay, this sounds like there's something that needs to be done here, and so I did a literature search, and there's nothing really about Southeast Asians except that one study by this woman. Her last name was Petrie, because I saw her over and over, and so I really wanted to contribute to this this gap. And so as a clinician, I'm always thinking of prevention, ways to do intervention and prevention, and so I decided to focus on Southeast Asian adolescents aged 14 to 18. Why? Anyone have any guesses?
They're very easily influenced at that age.
Exactly.
I was.
Thank you.
I still am.
I believe in Jorge.
Just 15 times 2.
And so that's what my dissertation focused on, was Southeast Asian youth. There were 3 things that I tried to examine or explore, because there was not a lot of research out there. It was a huge exploration of let's see what's out there, and let's collect evidence. So the first thing was basic characteristics of Southeast Asian youth, like how many people are gambling, what types of gambling behaviors are they doing on a daily basis, on a yearly basis. The second thing I tried to investigate was what's going on. Why are youth in this community, why are they gambling? What are the mechanisms that, have someone that might be a social gambler doing it on Lunar New Year's to someone that gambles on a daily basis and cannot stop thinking about gambling. So that was my second question. And then my last question was, what cultural variables are in play, if any? And so, I had those in mind. I, did this literature review and awful research methodology that was so foreign to me as a clinician. And I got through, and what I found out was that in the youth that I studied, the prevalence rate was 10% were problem gamblers. So across the nation, adolescents are about ranging from 3.5% to 7% depending on the research, and Southeast Asian youth were at 10% in my study. What types of gambling activities were they partaking in? Can anyone guess? Dice, yes. Card games. That was the number one. The number one form of gambling was card games, by a huge margin. Anyone have an idea for number 2? It was mentioned earlier during Michael's presentation.
Online.
I haven't heard it yet. Close to sports. It's betting on games of skill. Like, hey man, I want to play pool with you. etc. That was number 2, and the third one was sports, and then internet was the last one. Where are people gambling? Where are these youth gambling? They're gambling with family and with friends. Some are gambling with only friends, and some are gambling only with family, but the majority were gambling with both. And where are they learning it? Any guesses? Friends or family? Which one got number 1, you think?
Friends.
Friends was number 1. Family was second. Internet was third. What was their motivation to gamble? Why did they gamble? What did they self-report?
Excitement.
That was one of them.
Belonging.
It didn't make the top 3.
Financial gain.
Financial gain?
$4.
Yes, for excitement and challenge. So entertainment was the number 1 reason, and then followed by trying to make money, and third was excitement and challenge. So I found several risk factors that really coincide with a lot of other addictions. Risk factors of these youth are teenagers that smoked, drank alcohol, used marijuana, and played video games had a higher likelihood of becoming a problem gambler. And so, I hear some comments.
Don't self-diagnose.
I know, I tend to do that. The second thing I was looking at, as I said earlier, was to see what's going on. Why are Southeast Asian youth transferring from the social gambler to the problem gambler? So how I did this was I chose 2 predominant theories that clinicians and researchers were kind of juggling around with problem gambling. The first one being social learning theory. The name's pretty obvious. It's your social environment, your peers, your family, social messages that contribute to gambling behaviors. So that was the first theory. And the second theory I applied was cognitive theory. What kind of thoughts and beliefs that are perhaps irrational that may contribute to maladaptive behaviors such as problem gambling. So I used different instruments that helped me gather this information, and guess which theory explained problem gambling in this population better?
Social.
You guys are perfect. Perfect A students. Yes, social learning theory was significantly more powerful than cognitive theory. And so as a clinician, I'm reading this and I'm crunching the numbers and I'm thinking, okay, how does this apply to when I work with an adolescent that has a problem gambling behavior? How does this apply to prevention messages? And I'm like gathering this information, and maybe you are too from my article. And so I feel like the information with the social learning theory really gave me a lot of information of how we can concentrate the very little resources we have in the community to provide prevention and intervention messages. And so the last thing that I tried to examine is, here's another test. Do you remember? Okay, no. Cultural variables. So I wanted to see how were cultural variables that a lot of Southeast Asian youth may be sharing, how does that impact what's going on? And so what I found was that cultural variables such as acculturation level, cultural values such as having a lot of emotional control, all these cultural variables, and there's about 5 other ones, did significantly impact and predict if someone were to become a problem gambler. So this just, as a clinician, gave me more and more information of how to work with individuals that might present problem gambling behaviors. And so I was curious about other clinicians and what other trainings were available for mental health workers. And I came across this really interesting survey by Tim Pong at UCLA. He went to community mental health agencies that were Asian American focused in LA, and he surveyed them. He wanted to see how well educated are the clinicians with problem gambling issues. So what he found was that only 0.3% of the clinicians had any formal training. 0.5% had any experience dealing with a patient that has problem gambling. And only 15% of the clinicians even screen for problem gambling behaviors. And so when I found that, I was like, wow, there's this huge gap of what's going on in the research and what's going on in the community and what the clinicians can provide and are screening. Or it also tells me, are individuals with these problems coming to the agencies? And so I feel that coming here is really, it feels really optimistic to hear all the things that Napa FOSS is doing and Mikos is doing. They're all out there, and I only hope for more to come. And it seems that Aki has this grant, and I feel very, very optimistic about the future, but there's a lot that still needs to be done. Thank you.